And we're back with our HTML review. So today what I want to talk about is tables. If I click on the About page, we have our structure that we defined in our last episode, and in the main we don't really have much. We just say the polls About page. So when we create a table, we usually want to display data, like a data set that the user, that it makes it easier to identify the different components of the data if it's displayed as a table. So in our About page, what we're going to do is we're going to create a little pricing formula for our app. And we'll use a table to do that. So in our polls About page, we're going to replace that content. So let's replace this information with an H2 and the word About. Then we should probably follow that up with a paragraph that just describes this app. And then next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to display a table with all the pricing options for our app. So I'm actually going to start with another heading. And then I'm going to write the table tag. So if you've ever seen a spreadsheet, you know that a table is made up of rows and columns. And even though we have our table tag here, we have to, before we can start to display our tabular data, we need to display, we need to define our rows and our columns. So very simply, to define a row in our table, we're going to use a tag called tr. Now the tr tag defines a table row, but by itself, it's not going to, it doesn't work by itself. Inside the table row, we have to define our cells. So each row has a number of cells. And those cells can be one of two tags. They can be a TD for table data or a TH for a table header cell. I'm just going to make 3 cells, and then I'm going to take that whole row and I'm going to copy it 3 times. So now I have a 3 by 3 table. Let's see what this looks like. When I click on the About tab, I can see my table. Now it just says the word foo over and over again, which isn't really great, but it's the start. The fact is we see a row and we see 3 columns. So now let's go on to define our table a little further. We can have a caption for our table by using the caption tag. And the caption tag is supposed to be the first tag inside the table if you include it. So here we go. We're just going to say pricing as of 2020. And if I refresh my table, I can see that the caption shows up at the top of the table. And we can control that using CSS later on, but this is the default position for your caption. Now the table property, the table tag rather, has a bunch of attributes that are all deprecated. So back in the old days of the web, there was a lot of people used tables for web design. We would use it because it created a nice clean grid. We could use it to create a layout for our website. And even today, new programmers, new web developers might try to do that because it's such an easy structure to kind of latch onto. However, modern web developers use CSS for their layout. So It's always best practice to use tables for table data and never to use it for web layout. We have other tools for that in CSS, and you just need to invest the time in learning them. That's easier said than done. If you want more info on layout, CSS for layout, check out my Coffee Buddy videos. Otherwise, stay tuned and I will have a CSS crash course next. Okay, so we have our caption and then we have our table, but it's not going to say foo foo foo. What we want instead is some actual information in here. So let's create some different tiers for the app. Let's say the first tier is free. And then the second tier would be personal use. And then the third tier would be business use. Okay. And then each of these tiers would be different different price points, right? So the free tier would be free, of course. And we'll just say always free. Or how about free forever? And then our personal plan, let's say $5 a month. And then for our business plan, let's charge $25 a month. Okay, and then our final cell for our different tiers should have some other information, like what kind of features it comes with, or maybe like what limitations do you have in these different tiers. All right, so let's just say something simple like one poll. Oops. So one poll, and then for personal, we could do 30 polls. Let's make this monthly. Well, yeah. 30 polls per month, and then one poll per month. And then for the business plan, we'll say unlimited. Okay, so this is our table. If I go and preview it, I can see that we have our tiers, free, personal, business, and then the cost, and then the features. However, it's kind of hard to make sense out of this table because it doesn't have any header rows. So let's create a header, and we can define what each column represents. So after my caption, I'm going to create another TR. And then inside that, I'm going to use a TH. So this is a table header cell. And in here, it's going to look a little different in HTML, but I would use CSS to really style this and make it look like a clear header. But I'm going to I've got to label my first column, which has free, personal, or business. So this is the tier column. And then the next column is the cost column. And then the third column is the features. So if I save that and take a look at it, now I can see that I have a tier header, a cost header, and then a features header. Now, another thing I should do is to use some table tags that help define the header and the body of the table. So just like how we create groupings in our semantic tags for our web page, we have tags that can group together the different components of our table. So in the header, we've got these header cells, and they're all a part of this table row. But a table row by itself doesn't tell you much. So we're going to use a tag called thead. And thead stands for, you guessed it, table head. Okay, and then everything else after that is the body of the table. So we have a tag for that, tBody. And then down here, before the closing of the table, I'm going to close the table body. Now again, this isn't going to make a huge impact on the way that this looks right now, but it definitely helps with the structure of our table, and it helps create a well-structured HTML document. So looking at it like this, it's kind of hard to see like the rows and stuff. So one quick way to preview your table and to make sure that it's looking good is to add a deprecated attribute. Maybe this is bad practice, but I find it's like super easy to do. So I'll say border equals 1. And this attribute is not, you're not supposed to use this anymore. If you want to define the borders of your table, you should use CSS for that. But real quick, just so that I can see the results of my table, turning on the border is like super helpful when you're first starting out. It's really easy to make a mistake when you're coding a table because there's so many little tags and they're all nested inside each other. It's really easy to, call this a TH over here and a TD over here. You could forget to close a tag, and there is some optional syntax for tables. Like for example, doing this is totally okay and it might work fine. But just in general, I always recommend closing your tags, especially when you're first starting out. You might save a little bit of time. Maybe the file will be a little smaller, but I think it's worth doing. Okay, so this table is okay. It's functional. It shows the different tiers, the costs, and the features, and you can easily compare the sets of information. There's no action, like there's no sign up button. So it would probably be better to have like a little button that we could use to sign up for one of these things, some kind of call to action for each of these. But I'll save that for refactoring later on. For now, I just wanted to show you how to create a basic table. And here we've got our table structure. It's all good to go. We've got our caption. I'm just going to turn off that border because we would use CSS for that if we really wanted it to be part of our app. We don't want to use a deprecated attribute. Okay, that looks good. So that's it for tables for today. That was a really simple intro. There's a lot of tags to tables and a lot of different ways to write them. So, anytime you sit down to write a table, you want to make sure that you plan it out, you research your tags, and check out those resources that I talked about in the beginning of the series. The MDN, the Mozilla Development Network, and the W3 Schools website has excellent documentation on tables and best practices. And if you're a little more advanced and you want to go straight to the source, definitely check out the spec on tables because there's some really interesting rules there that you should familiarize yourself with. Anyway, this is just a super basic intro. Thanks for watching.